Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Excellent, excellent. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Let me just double check my settings on here and make sure we're getting all the right stuffs. Think, yeah, we are good. Cool.
How are you?
Right on. Really, really good, man. I was super like up really early this morning, so I've kind of just been bouncing around and getting a bunch done already. So feeling good.
Okay.
How's your day been? What time is it by you? Where are you?
Oh, I'm outside of Minneapolis, so it's just 2 hours later here.
Right on.
Thanks for willing to do this.
Oh my gosh, no, it's my pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah. So I could just jump around then with your career so far, maybe try to focus more on roles that you haven't talked about as much.
Whatever you want to talk about, I'm down to just jam on. So just
Okay.
free form it however you like. I'm game.
Well, in terms of professional acting, was it with David Sobolov short film? That's how you started?
Is that how I started? Yeah. I would you say like as far as the first thing I ever did, you mean like acting wise? Oh gosh. Way longer than that. Years ago, actually, when I was still a kid, I did a lot of theater and I did a lot of training back in New York. When I was like in high school, I went to this school in Manhattan called HB Studios. That is like an acting school, and took a lot of classes there, and made a lot of short films with friends and stuff like that. And then the first few professional jobs were actually I did a lot of like extra work. Um, because when I first moved out here, my band basically was still my first priority, but I kind of thought, you know what, I'm in Los Angeles. Like, sorry, let me switch this. I'm in Los Angeles, and I've always loved acting, and I miss it. So I kind of looked at all the different websites. I was like, I'm living out here. Maybe it's like a cool way to get like extra income. Maybe I could do extra work and just whatever. And I got the bug again. So it was really like literally doing commercials. Like I did a weird commercial for Facebook where I sang, do you know the song Walkin' in Memphis?
Yeah.
So I sang that. I don't know if you can still find it somewhere, but it like aired a couple of years ago. And it was like this really weird thing where it was like the guy who shot it was the DP on the movie The Favorite, which is like one of my favorite movies of like that year, like really surreal, weird experience. So I was working on these really cool, weird things, but in really small capacity. And I was taking classes again out here acting, and that's how I ended up actually in the Sobolov film, which is what ultimately really led me into the voiceover world at large. Because my a friend of mine in the class, who is another great actor and voice actor, Talon Warburton, he literally one day came into class and was like, "Hey, you're you're like really good at this. Would you be into like co-starring in this short film that I'm doing?" And I was like, "That's an incredibly kind offer. Like, I would love to do that." And we got together over a few weekends and started to like workshop the thing. And that was actually how I met David, because he was getting brought on to direct it, and we had never met before. I knew his work, but like I didn't know him at all as a person. And it was kind of this crash course, like, oh, okay, we're just gonna like get into this emotional zone together, because it was like a really heavy subject matter that the short film was based around. And it was one of those things where you're like, well, if we're all gonna do this, we have to like just really be vulnerable with each other, and be really open and just kind of like go for it. So it was an immediate like you're just raw with each other, and there's a sense of like you're just going to get close off of that, or you're going to like really go the opposite direction.
Mhm.
But we like immediately kind of felt like family. And he was one of the first people who was like, do you do voiceover at all? And I I had dabbled in the idea of it, but never really like full scope at that point. And he basically was like, this is something that you can really focus on and I think be good at. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, I don't have a reel. And he's like, well, I produce reels. So I worked on mine with him. And for a few weeks, we kind of went back and forth, just like mostly through phone calls, and he would be like, present me some characters, just present, like, he like through the over the phone, he would just be like, introduce me to some characters. And like I would just kind of workshop these different characters and start talking to him in these crazy personalities. And if something made him laugh or made him kind of like react a certain way, we would like write it down, and we were like, okay, here's the list of the weird characters we're going to do for this reel. And then we went in and I improvised the whole reel with him, where he basically was on the other side of the glass and was like directing me for the session, but essentially was just kind of like, okay, you're this character that, we've decided upon, like 6 characters or whatever that we kind of, that I came up with and, introduced to him. And he was like, okay, now you're this character. And he would just kind of like ask me questions like about life or whatever as that character for me. So I would have to just respond. And I just kind of went off like a crazy person. And we made my reel. And then I was like, okay, I've got a couple of measly extra credits and all these little things like, that are on IMDb or whatever. So I have like legitimacy as an actor. And now I have this reel and I live near all of these different studios. Maybe I should just reach out to some of them and see what happens. Cause I don't know how else to get access to these places. And I basically took the gamble. I researched whatever the proper pipelines were to like actually get in touch with these places, and was like, hey, I know you don't know me, like I'm new in town, I'm an actor, blah blah blah, and kind of sent off all the emails, never expecting to hear from anyone. And really quickly, some like a few weeks later, some a few months later, people just kept getting back to me, some with, yeah, like, here's an audition, or somewhere like immediately, like I actually booked Final Fantasy remake. I ended up booking it literally off of those emails, like all kinds of weird stuff that just kind of came through. And I was like, huh, okay, I guess we're doing this. And it just kind of hit the ground running. And I, from my very first session where I really got to go in and work on something like in a professional setting, it was this instantaneous, like everything, it's like, you ever have that thing where the room kind of like closes in and like the focus, everything, you're just like, this is it. It was this realization of like, this is everything I loved about being in a band, mixed with everything I love about acting and doing theater and all these things. But the stuff that I didn't like about being on set and on doing on camera work is you'd do a 15-hour day, but you'd only get to really work for like a couple of hours because so much is waiting and setup and this and that, whatever. But in voiceover, if you're booked for 2 hours, you're working for 2 hours, which means playtime, and it was just this immediate thing of like, oh my God, if I can find a way to keep doing this, this is the greatest job in the world. And it just kind of like, it hit me so hard that I was like, I can't let this go. And at this point, I had been super broke for months. I had worked like a bunch of different jobs. I had been with my band for years. I was in my early 30s, and like my job laid my entire department off. So I was out of work. My band broke up. I was in this like crazy like rebirth of my life. And I just kind of went full on and was like, we'll see. Let's see what happens. I love this. Let's see if it'll accept me. And I literally haven't stopped since. It just kind of like kept going. It's been incredible. I've been so fortunate.
Was your well, back to on camera, was the little part that you had in Fatale, was that before voiceover stuff?
You're doing your homework. Yeah, that was before I was doing voiceover. That was such a crazy experience. That was one of the first times that like I actually had a larger realization of like, maybe there's a place in this industry for me, because I was just an extra on that set, and it was like easily 200 or 300 people. Like I was just one in a sea of people. Like there was nothing about me that was like, that was being utilized in an important way, other, more than anybody else. And it was at this like giant club, or it was like, I don't remember if it was a church or like whatever it was. It was this weird, just like big place that they turned into a club. I guess it had a bar, so it was some kind of club, but they spent the whole day with us there. It was about 13 or 15 hours. We brought our own clothes because we were just the extras. They're just like, dress fancy, dress like you're going to a club. So I just like brought two different suits and basically spent most of the day getting either paired up with different people or like put by myself in like different places, like different corners of this place, because they just kind of recycle, the multiple hundred different versions of us, because no one's gonna like really notice, and they'll like pair you up differently and put you in this corner up on this platform, whatever, and they're just stopping and starting and doing all these cuts, and the film was with uh spacing on their names now. You might have the IMDb up,
Hillary
but
Swank and
yeah, Hillary, yeah, and uh Michael Ealy, I believe his name was also. Yeah. And it was so trippy because I was like, oh, that's cool. Hillary Swank is like right there. And she's, that's an Oscar winner and all this, it felt like very tangible. Then out of nowhere, in the middle of one of the shots, one of the ADs comes up to me and one of the girls that I was paired with and kind of like from a distance, like points and is like, you come with me. And we both assume she's talking about the girl I'm with. So like I point to the girl and the girl points to herself and we're both like her and she's like me. And the AD's like, no, 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 you. And then we both switch and I'm like, me? And she's like, him? And she's like, yeah. So I go down and I'm like, did I do something wrong? Like, am I in trouble? What did I do? Like, what, oh shit. And she just kind of grabs me and she's like, are you cool with like, and I like barely heard what she said. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then the next thing I know, she pulls me right next to Hillary Swank and Michael Ealy. And she's like, okay, so what the director needs you to do is you're going to come and order a drink and then you're going to like elbow Michael. And all of a sudden I'm like getting involved in this scene. And I'm like, what is happening? And I'm just like, I'm freaking out. So I'm like, I won't say anything. I won't overstep. I'm just going to listen. I'm going to do whatever they say. I'm going to try to figure this out and like just be part of the solving of the problem. And we get through this whole thing. And it was just this really bizarre, like, I didn't know what I was doing. They weren't sure what they needed from me. It was kind of like they were like figuring it out what they were like as they were shooting. But it was this really awesome experience of getting singled out and brought into this thing. And then at the end of the day, they bumped up my rate and my like day player thing to like a SAG thing, like all these things kind of like, I was like, what is happening? This is so nuts, like out of obscurity. And it just felt like, okay, maybe this isn't crazy. So I'm just going to keep going. And yeah, then when I led to doing the voiceover stuff, that suddenly it became a thing of like, oh, here's something that I really am passionate about, and like it's opening up and accepting me, at least in a weird way at first. And it was this sense of like, okay, how much do you care about it? How bad do you want it? And I just quadrupled down on studying, on my homework, on my emotional work, on just the craft itself, on understanding what the job requirements are outside of the acting part of it, understanding what other people within the industry need from me, whether it's directors or engineers or casting directors, or how I can make their jobs easier or whatever it may be. And just kind of like got hungrier and hungrier and more excited the more invested I got, so it just kind of immediately, like the bug hit so hard.
Was that also how you got into SAG then?
Yeah, it was a weird mix. It was that mixed with, I immediately started getting to work on a lot of live action dubs. It was like that was a lot of my first voiceover work professionally. And that was happening around the same time that there was an agreement with Netflix that was happening where they were flipping all of the dubs union.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time, like before I knew it, I basically worked on enough projects where they're like, hey, you're cool to flip union now, like if you're want to go. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so soon. Okay, why not? Like, let's see. This is, again, the universe being like double down. So I was like, yeah, okay, why not?
Mm-hmm.
And I took the leap, and it excited me too, because I was like, this means that I can still pursue on camera and all the other things that I want to. It feels like, it's this larger thing, and it felt like a rite of passage. Like I always dreamt of getting a SAG card, and I was like, it's like the chicken and the egg, and I don't know how to do it. Like I remember in high school being like, that would be crazy, and now it's just like in my wallet.
Well, and I know in terms of anime that it started with Welcome to Demon School, but was the first more dramatic part that you got was in JoJo's?
Yeah, I would say as far as anime and like getting to go to like a dark kind of more adult place, yeah. And that was kind of terrifying because I was still really new, in general to not just the industry, but like to doing the work. And I I hadn't watched JoJo, but I knew how much of a,
Mhm.
devoted fan base there was. I knew the weight that it carried. So I kind of went into it like, oh man, people are gonna really be like, first off, who's this guy? Like, that's like taking over this role that I'm sure they would rather someone else, I'm sure plenty of people had fan casted him already, and and I was just worried that they just weren't gonna like it, or they were going to like just tear me apart or something. And then also JoJo itself, it's so its own language, the dialogue is so its own kind of thing, and the performance asks a certain kind of performance of you that's not necessarily like even normal for regular anime. Like it's a very specific thing. And being so new, I was like, all right, this is just like a puzzle piece. I just have to like, again, just like put on the like soldier helmet and be like, I'm just gonna ride with you. And thankfully Tony Oliver, who is the director, was just and is just amazing and is so in control and like is so aware of what JoJo needs
Mhm.
that, I literally remember one of the first things he said to me in the first session was like, so this is how we do JoJo. And he kind of like went into an explanation of like, there's a cadence and all this stuff to it that may seem a little strange, but he's like, just trust it and kind of like, go with it. And like there was just it was such a wild experience because it was, you know, I think we had 2 sessions. There was about 2 episodes, and it was like all this like monologuing and all this stuff, and just so much of it was just so new to me that I was like, man, I don't even know. Like I remember walking out of the last session and being like, I don't even know what's just happened. Like I don't even know what happened over the last 2 sessions. I hope it comes out okay. I hope people like it. But it was so gratifying.
Mhm. Do you think that is the darkest headspace you've had to go for anime, or is there something more than that?
Yeah, probably at the moment. I mean, I've and what's weird is I don't even necessarily know that it's like that dark of a headspace that I went to. I think it's more subject matter to play with, that is obviously like the violence of it and everything, but it's also kind of like so fun and campy that, there was never a point recording that where I was like emotionally down. If anything, it was like, you're just like, this is wild. It's like there's like shark fights in a bathroom. It's like there's so much happening that I was like, this is just like, it's like high art Shakespeare, insanity. Maybe like the most like emotional, like kind of like weight that I've got to play with so far was there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot with Rody, towards the end of the My Hero film, and there's also a lot with uh, Arash in Fate Grand Order. There's a lot that I got to really dig in there with not that much screen time, but they really gave him some really special stuff to like to get in with. I've yet to really play a character in the long run who like really goes through the mud, like, and I kind of want to in a weird way. There's something I think that would be really satisfying about someone who really just has to like just go through all the emotions and really go to some weird places. I'm ready for that. I would love to do that. I think it would be really cathartic, and I uh I would love to like just kind of give myself over to something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting with the Fate movie because I mean there's so many characters in that, but you wouldn't have necessarily expected that Arash got such a big, like, grand
Yeah,
emotional thing.
they gave him it's such a beautiful moment, and like I remember when we got up to it, that was another thing. And funny enough, Tony also directed me in that. And it was so nice because it was like 2 years after the fact that we had worked together on JoJo's already. I felt so much more in control of myself, of my machine as an actor. Um, and it felt nice to kind of like come back to work with him and be like, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but like, I was like totally brand new when we first met, and now I think I know what I'm doing a little bit. And it was so much fun. And it felt like I was meeting him more on a level of peer and play with that. And yeah, when we got to that moment, it was another thing of like, oh man, I can't screw this up. I don't want to screw this up. And I hope I didn't. I love that character.
Mhm. I know there isn't a whole lot, at least not yet, with Loki and Ragnarok, but obviously he's pretty nuts. So.
Oh man, he's so much fun. He's so much fun. He's easily one of the most chaotic characters I've ever gotten to play. And like he's just like the life of the party. I mean, it's such a funny thing because like when I got cast as him, Megan Buckholz, who directed us on that, she reached out to me and she was like, hey, I cast you in a thing. And I was like, huh? Cool. Because I had read for her a bunch for a few other shows and we just hadn't worked together yet. And we were kind of like just dancing around stuff. And I guess based on other auditions, she was like, you'd be a good fit for this crazy guy. So she literally just like cast me as Loki ahead of time and let me know and was like, just give me your schedule and let me know when you're free. And, and we set it up. And I was like, at first she didn't even tell me what we were working on. And I was like, if, because we hadn't worked together yet. So I didn't want to like overstep my boundaries. And I was like, hey, I'm not going to like put anything out there, but if you can tell me what it is that I'm about to do for you, like I would love to do some research because I'm a nerd and I like to do my homework and kind of prepare. Because the thing about especially dubbing, like most of the time of this job and a lot of voiceover in general, like you don't get prep time. You don't get, that's the thing that I love about theater and film and on camera stuff that you don't get to do in voiceover is like you'll get weeks of rehearsal and prep time and you'll get to take the script home and like really sit in the story and the characters. And like, with voiceover, it's like literally you're like, it's okay, 12:59. All right, it's 1 o'clock and now we're starting the session. And oh, okay, so this is what's happening. All right, we're just going. All right, and I'm emoting. And like, it's like it's so there and immediate. And that's, freaking terrifying. But like I've become, I've enjoyed that more and I've embraced that more. But I like to be able to be prepared or at least understand, like, okay, here's the tone of the thing that we're playing with. Here's the like energy I should bring to it, even if we're going to figure it out in the session. And she was kind enough to tell me. And first off, I was like, whoa, I get to play Loki in anything. That's cool, because what a cool legacy character to, get to play in a time where there's so many cool iterations of Loki. And then not knowing anything about Record of Ragnarok, I looked up the manga and started reading it and instantly was like, this is wild, and got really emotionally involved in it. I mean, as that the first issue alone is so powerful and I wasn't prepared for it. So it really kind of like knocked my socks off. And I was like, okay, this is a really, really special, weird, cool rock and roll project. And it feels super punk rock, right? It's like a very punk rock idea. So I don't, I haven't spoiled myself too far ahead. Like I read a little bit further than that. Like I read a decent amount of the chapters, but I stopped at a certain point. So I don't know what's continued.
Okay.
But I obviously know, as far as where season 2 is going to start off and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to see how they play out with that. But like, I don't know what happens next for Loki. There's a lot that I'm like, I wonder where they're going to go with him. I imagine they're going to give him some fun stuff to do, because you can't let the trickster sit on the sidelines for too long.
Mm-hmm. And vocally with his character, since you got to do a lot of like lilting stuff with that too. Was that pretty easy for you?
There are challenging things where you can like strain or push yourself in ways, and then there are challenging things where it's like finding the like balance that is just more the character. And I'm one of those people who, when especially with voiceover, it's really important to like, you want to be able to maintain the thing.
Hmm.
So a lot of the time, like even in the, if you like take classes with casting directors or certain people, they'll all kind of say like, hey, if you're auditioning for a character, make sure that whatever you're doing in that audition, you can maintain, because if that's what they book you with and they need you to do that for hours on end, on any given day, if that fries your voice out, or suddenly halfway through the session you can't maintain it, like that's going to be an issue.
Hmm.
So there are certain things where like, if the character's only got X amount of time and you can like pressure cook it and go for it, and you want to do something really out there, that's one thing. But a lot of the time for me, I would rather find a way in that is like, I don't I don't want to just do a voice to do a voice. I want to do something that feels like it fits the character, feels like it fits their energy and their tone and their psyche. So a lot of it, and again, a lot of it you kind of have to just figure out immediately. And he just is so sassy. And there's just so much immediately that like pops off of him, that I just felt like he had to be this kind of raspy, high and low. It's like his voice is almost everywhere. It kind of is like, depending on what's kind of striking his fancy in that moment, like he might bubble down here, he might like tinkle up here. He's kind of, I wanted to play him almost like a basket case, but
Hmm.
like in a way where he's, in my mind, he's putting out the crazy, but he's way more calculated inside. He kind of just wants people to like have this perception of him as being like this party boy, bonkers, off the wall, chaos kind of agent. But there's so much more calculation, I think, going on
Hmm.
internally. So it's a fun dynamic to play.
What do you think is the case so far, just in general, where you've had to alter your voice the most significantly?
You know what? Funny enough, one of the trickiest ones was for Kite in Prince of Tennis,
Oh.
because he's got this like oddly low, weird space that I normally don't use that much. And it's kind of like, that was a voice that I definitely had to learn to maintain. Like that was a good example of like, I auditioned with this like really specific deeper register and was like, oh, this is a cool space I've never quite sat in before. But then I was like, uh-oh, can I maintain this? And it took a minute. Like I remember the first few sessions, it took a minute to like really like sit and like sit in him. Like, it's like at first sometimes you can like get a line out, and then maybe it would like, I'd hit a level or just like gas out. And I was like, oh man, okay, I have to like learn how to like massage that lower register more. So he was kind of challenging at first, but he really helped me find more of my lower range. And that stuff I've been able to explore more since him. Um, I would say that in general, like lower register for me, like really finding that like getting down low, that stuff is really tricky. And fun to like to push for. I like trying that because I tend to have a higher voice.
Hmm.
And there are little things that I like to kind of challenge myself with, as far as if I think it pertains to the character in a way that is important, that is a trait that I feel like I need to uphold. Because I think more than anything, consistency is really key to like having any kind of variety. Like, there are a lot of characters that I do that I think are pretty close to just my speaking voice,
Hmm.
but based on who they are in their personality, it alters kind of where it sits slightly in a way, or the attitude shift, creates a dynamic that shifts my voice in a way, versus it being like, oh, he's mad, so I'm going to play him like this, like, kind of thing. It's it's a weird thing. I kind of let the character tell me who they are more than I decide who they are.
Hmm. I would guess that you probably relate the most to Rody.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, I've said it many a times already, but what a gift that character is and has continued to be. A lot of the stuff that kind of like, I take it you've seen the movie. I don't want to spoil things if you haven't. Um, but a lot of the stuff that, he went through kind of in his backstory mirrored a lot of what happened in my life in a lot of ways, not necessarily to a T, but enough where I felt like I knew him and connected to him on a really deep level, and just his personality and the way that he viewed life. There's so much about him that I just knew to my core,
Mhm.
and again didn't know anything about him until we started working on him in the first session. And I remember just being like really emotional, like working on the scenes and like getting a little choked up, even like in scenes where I had nothing to do with being choked up. And I had to like, I kept stopping and telling Colleen, I was like, I don't think you realize like what I like. This is so like, I could barely put words together. I was like, this means so much to me. I don't like, and, I kept, it was so funny because when I booked him, they had like asked ahead of time. They were like, we're going to need about 12 to 15 hours of recording time with you. So like at first I was like, my brain went like, oh my God, that's incredible. And then after like the first session of the first, or like maybe like the second or third session, because we did them in like, 3 or 4 hour chunks or 2 hour chunks based on, they had to record so many people for that movie. And I remember hitting a certain point where I was like, oh well, this is probably like one of the last scenes he's going to be in, and then like he's just going to pop in and out, and like then the movie's going to like the rest of the movie's going to happen. I don't know why it didn't register to me that like he was going to be such a big part of the film.
Mhm.
And then they just kept bringing me back in for more sessions, and more kept happening, and I was like, what is going on? This is wild. And yeah, by the end of it I was like, this is the closest I've ever felt to any character, and he might be the closest I'll ever feel to playing one. But at the same time, that doesn't stop me from connecting to the other characters that I play.
Mhm.
There's this weird thing where like I enjoy just as much getting to play characters that I don't immediately relate to, because I have to find a way in. I don't want to say I don't judge my characters, because that's, one, it's a cliche thing. And because I kind of do both, I will totally like, we'll be in sessions and like something will happen in a scene, and we'll preview it and I'll be like, oh my God, what an asshole, like or whatever, like I'll have comments on a thing. But like playing a character, I play them as if I were, coming from their heart and their soul and their objectives and their ideals and their motives. And it's like, no bad guy thinks they're the bad guy, right? Like you all think you're the protagonist of your your thing, regardless of who you are. The character is going to tell me who they are, and I'm going to love them no matter what, and I'm going to accept them. And it's like when you make a friend, I'm sure you have a super close friend who like is nothing like you, but you're like, this person is so close to me and I would do anything for them, because you just understand who they are regardless of needing to like understand why they are.
What about with I know it's like a night and day character in comparison, but Ryang Ha in Love and Kill.
Oh dude, I adore playing him. He's been another one who's been like so much fun to play, because he has such crazy dynamic high and lows, like, and he's like almost two characters in one. He's got this really cool, cold, brutal killer kind of persona, and then there's this total man child,
Mhm.
playful, he's like a puppy who has like in so many ways hasn't like he hasn't aged past a certain age. Like I feel like he's kind of forever a teenager, even though he's, well into his 20s at this point. I think he's kind of, there's like an arrested development, to him. And I love that. I love how silly he can be and how dangerous he can be. And I've I rarely get to play characters that are, especially in anime and stuff. It's like you never get to play characters that are older.
Mhm.
Everyone's like a teenager, and it's fun playing someone who is more of an adult, and and getting to play a kind of like, there's a sensuality to him, there's a coolness to him that you can like, that I get to approach that I normally don't get to put into characters, and it feels appropriate and it's fun, and it's like it's such a cheeky, weird assassin show. Like it's so much fun. And Aaron Yvette, who plays Chateau, is so good to play off of. And like there are times like we'll be doing scenes, like I don't get to work with her directly, but if she records before I do or vice versa, like I will just be cracking up off of the dynamic we get. It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this was going back to another dark series that people don't really talk about, Scar on the Praetor.
Oh yeah. That dude, so that was the first lead in a show that I had booked, and I it was so weird because I remember auditioning for it, and it was just like this long monologue, and I had no idea where it fit, what it meant. Like it was like very jargony. I barely understand this, but I'm just gonna read for it, whatever. And like it was one of those that I just didn't really think too much of. I just kind of like did it and sent it in and was like, I'll never hear back from that. And then when they cast me and I like looked it up, I was like, oh my God, this dude's the lead of the show. Oh, what is okay, all right. I guess I have to like buck up and prepare for this. And we actually were recording that at the exact same time that we were recording the My Hero movie. So I was doing double duty because I recorded, I would say about 20 hours or so on Scar on the Praetor. So it was like just between those two projects, I was ping-ponging enough and trying to balance also a character that, like, again, neither of those characters did I stretch my voice too far, but I put them in slightly different places based on their personalities and stuff like that. But Scar on the Praetor was so fun because it's just so bizarre. Like it's such a like, I mean this in the most loving way. It's kind of a nonsense show, like so much of the dialogue, like I'm just like, I don't know what this is so out there, and like so much of it just kind of happens, and I'm like, we're dance fighting with guns, like this is insane. And like it was just so much fun to do, and the cast is so cool, and it was just kind of this thing. I felt it was really the challenge of like consistency, like finding a way to play this character for a long time and giving them a weight where I felt like they had purpose, especially because I felt like it was such a hard plot to grasp that I was like, I hope I can give this some kind of grounded nature, because it's so big and out there. And like some of the dialogue, even just saying it, I was like, this is so hard to like make sound convincing, so that in itself was a cool challenge. And I was like, how do I make this sound like people say this stuff?
Oh, it would have been since Yuri Drews is a lot more of a grounded character.
He's a fun one too. What's funny is I kind of think of him almost like a distant cousin to Loki. There's a similar kind of like, there's like a wry smile and there's like a wink to both of them, where I think, Yuri is a lot more on the side of chaotic good, I would say, but definitely chaotic good. He likes things to be a little crazy and messy, and he experiments and toys with people, and he's always kind of playing with Say, and like he's also very childish in a lot of ways, but he has that weird, almost like, it's like if Professor Snape wasn't a curmudgeon, so he's really, really fun to play with, and he has this kind of softness to him in his voice, but at the same time he's like a total badass. I love that character.
I suppose, is there not much of a story with being involved in the SAO movie?
It really kind of came out of nowhere. I've worked, a lot with Bang Zoom over the years, and I I had never read for SAO, and I don't remember how I ended up getting this part, but it was, I mean, it was very brief because, you know, it's like he only kind of has a few scenes in it, and then he's just kind of like, all right, sis, sorry, I'm sending you I'm isekaiing you into this whole scenario.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, play the straight man, play like the very normal older brother, like which in a lot of ways is almost the most challenging thing for me,
Mhm.
because I'm used to being like kind of the like the rogue guy or the outlandish guy or the punk rock guy or like the noisy guy or the like the assassin, like, you know, it's like all the other things. I'm the alternative guy, you know, I was in the indie bands and all this stuff, and like, you know, I'm the guy with tattoos, so like even with typecasting on camera and stuff, like nobody was like, you're going to be the lawyer, you're going to be, you know, like you're going to be this, you know. So it was cool to be like, you're going to be the older brother who's basically a businessman. And I was like, you know what, I love it. Like, how do I make this also feel real and convincing, and like how do I put that skin on and not feel like awkward, you know? So it was fun, it was really fun. And Alex von David is such a great director,
Mhm.
and that was the first time we got to work together. I hope we get to work together more, because it was it was this really like fun dance of just kind of like, he speaks a film language in a way that not every director does, and I love talking in movies. So a lot of the way that we like spoke about the character was like referencing either other movies or other things, and like it was, yeah, it was great.
I know it's pretty rare to do it in anime too, but I think the main instance so far where you've gotten to play multiple characters is it was in Kuroko.
There's a few shows that I've like been able to do a lot of like, you know, like Walla or like bit parts and stuff like that, and it's always super fun because you kind of like, usually it's like 1 or 2 sessions. It's, you know, you're not like working on the show for a very long time. It's like, you know, maybe a total of like anywhere from like 2 to 6 hours, you know. And in that, you know, even just like a 2 hour block, you may get to play like 10 different characters, and you know, they'll just jump around all for different episodes, and they're like, okay, now we need you to be this big guy in the back who's about to get hit in the gut. All right, like what's he got to sound like, and like how do we fill this space, and like, oh, okay, now we have to, it's like it's a really cool crazy improv game where it really stretches your muscles in different ways, and kind of asks you to think outside of your comfort zone and all that stuff. So and Kuroko being that was my first sport anime also, and I am not an athlete. Like I've never been good at sports, so I don't have that language, you know, I don't have that like in my lexicon. So it was really fun again, like to do something so out of my comfort zone and like try and do it convincingly.
Mhm.
Uh and yeah, like I got to play a really like rotten bully. Like I got to do all kinds of fun stuff.
When you had that instance with Genshin, were you auditioning for a major character?
I read for a couple of guys randomly. I'm trying to remember who they were. Um but yeah, I had read for a couple of like the player characters like early on, and that was initially how I ended up getting brought in to do some of the NPCs. And yeah, I love working with those guys. I've gotten to come back a couple of times. Like every now and then they'll just hit me up and be like, "Hey, would you know, we got some more stuff." And they're very, I think they're like really loyal to, you know, I mean the game is so big. They can bring in so many actors, and I think when they bring in someone they like to work with, they're just like, "Hey, let's party some more. You down?" And you're like, "Yeah." But that would be, I mean, that would be super fun to like actually be a playable character in that game, because that world is so massive and it's so enchanting and it's so like Zelda like. There's so much there that it would be fun to like explore it more, because when you do the NPCs, it's very much like you're like a part of a quest or a part of a thing, and it's like kind of detached because like I have no idea what's going on, you know. So it's like you kind of get, you know, a briefing as you're doing it, but it's very much like, oh yeah, so in this scenario, and you're like, oh okay, and you just kind of go into it, versus like I would love to like take a character on a journey, you know, in
Mhm.
that game.
I'm shocked that you haven't been part of Fire Emblem Heroes yet.
Oh man, Fire Emblem, Fire Emblem, like what an incredible freaking franchise. I was literally just talking to somebody about Three Houses the other day because I have a friend who hasn't, he like just got a Switch and he hasn't played a lot of the
Yeah.
must play games. And I was like, dude, if there's one thing you need to get into, it's Fire Emblem, like in any capacity. And Heroes is another one. Like Heroes is so like it's so cool seeing mobile games getting such like attention in this way. You know, it's so rad. Yeah, Heroes would be dope.
Well, no, of course, you got to be directed by Caitlin and Kyle and SMT5.
Yeah. Oh man, that was so much fun. And it was cool that I got both of them. What's really funny is it really would have just been Caitlin because we actually did like 99.9% of Konsu's dialogue in one session, and it was Caitlin directing me. I think Kyle, for whatever reason, Kyle wasn't there that day, so we just did our thing together, and then like 6 months went by, and I thought I was done, and then they're like, "Hey, we need you for some pickups. There's like a couple things we need to fill in." And I went back in and it was literally for 2 lines.
Oh,
And but Kyle directed me on that session. So we got to hang out and I was like, oh sweet, hey man. It was like 10 minutes. And then we were like, all right, well, later.
what was your experience on the world ends with you?
Oh man, The World Ends with You was so much fun. That was another one where I had read for a bunch of the other characters, and I had worked with Skylark, with the studio that recorded on it. I had done Final Fantasy remake with them, so they were actually one of the first studios in town to ever give me a job. So I read for a couple of those characters. And by the way, Paul Castro Jr., who plays Rindo in that,
Mhm.
such a phenomenal performance and such a great human being. I love that dude, and like he's a rock star. That guy, he's just gonna keep flying. Um, but I remember getting the email and they were like, "Hey, we want to bring you in for this," and I was like, I already knew the code name because I read for it, and I was like, yes, I get to be a part of this, and I didn't know until I got in there because they were like, okay, so let's see, we have you for this person, and like they went down the list, and I was like, say that one more time, and they were like, oh yeah, and they're like, yeah, so you're gonna play EG and I was like, what? Because I had played the first game, so I was really freaking excited. I was like, I don't care if he only has a couple of lines, like to me that's like legacy stuff, that's so dope. And funny enough, Bob Buckholes directed me on that, who is Megan's dad, and Megan is the one who directed me on Record of Ragnarok, so it was like a weird, another like uh funny circular thing. And I actually worked on The World Ends with You before I worked on Ragnarok, and um I'm pretty sure to some degree that also had to do with how I ended up getting Ragnarok, because it was like, you get to work with people, and it's that just that thing of like, if people have a good time with you, like, you know thankfully word of mouth can spread, and they can be like, hey, this person is not total garbage, you should you should check them out.
So, is there anything else that's upcoming that you're a part of that you can safely talk about?
Not that I could talk about yet, but there's some really cool stuff. I will say that I can say that I'm incredibly excited. The next few months, and funny enough, the crazy part is like the next few months and next few years are going to be really exciting, because there are things that you work on and it's like, oh, this is going to come out in 2 years. Like like it's weird, like anime, we're lucky, like with dubbing and stuff, it's on this kind of post production side where it's like so much is already done that like the thing's ready to put out there. It's just a matter of like, if the studio wants to sit on it for X amount of months or whatever before they release it, or whatever their schedule is. But like with games, a lot of the time, or with Western animation, or with certain things, you'll work on a project, and depending how early on they are into it, or how involved you need to be in the process, it could be years, and you just have to like sit on it.
Mhm.
And it's this weird thing of like, even that gets easier, the not talking about it part, because other things fill up the gaps, you know, where it's like you can't talk about this, but suddenly you could talk about this, and this, and you're like, okay, like that. At least I could breathe a little bit. I could let some of the like air out of the tires. Um, but yeah, very soon I think I'm gonna get to start talking about some stuff. But it's been a pinch me couple of years, man. Like, and the last few months, you know, really like Rody really did a lot to change, you know, my life in so many ways, but a lot of it, like even just awareness of the industry on a larger scale, you know, a lot of cool opportunities and auditions and things came to me. Excuse me. Kombucha getting me all burpy. um a lot of cool things came to me because of Rody, and I've been really, really fortunate to get to try a lot of new stuff and stretch some new muscles and play characters I didn't think I'd get to play. And yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Well, my final question is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
Whoa, that's a great question. You just that's like um um I guess I think ultimately I want it to be I want to be able to leave behind work that is full of compassion and heart and humor and you know, as much as I can enjoy being part of things that are crazy and have violence and all these things, ultimately I really want to leave a if I get to leave anything, it ways of all of us healing and being better to each other and being more kind. And I would love to be part of more projects that are about loving people and unity and growth and progress, and you know, finding ways to break down walls of all these different barriers that create so many unnecessary problems that we have even just as humans with each other. um I would love to find ways to help the environment more, you know. I would love to find ways to do all kinds of stuff, whether it's through the work directly or not. But if anything, I would say love and compassion, and hopefully that resonation that like we can just be good to each other. The fact that you reached out to me and have been so kind to give me your time and ask these questions and do the research that you have, like that's so generous of you. And eh, I never thought that I'd get to do this work and get to have a career and then get to have people that care about it's like there's so many layers of like, is this real? You know, like it's so mind-blowing to me that people actually like the stuff that I get to do and get to be a part of. And it's such a gift. So I hope if anything, people just take away how much I care about it and how much I love it and how much uh you know what, if anything, I hope it shows people that are passionate about creating whatever it is in any medium, whether they want to be an actor, writer, director, musician, painter, cosplayer, fashion designer, whatever it is, school teacher, I don't even care, whatever it is. I hope that me having a career doing this shows other people that they can follow their dreams and succeed and find doing what they love to be a lifestyle, and that they can then use that to do good in the world.
Mhm.
So I hope that's it.
Well, thanks. I'm glad that we got to do this.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored. This is so kind of you, and I I really hope that you get to continue to do this with all kinds of cool people, and I hope people have been appreciative of what you are doing, like for this community at large. Like it's doing stuff like this. I mean, I'm amazed at how much community for anime and video games like outside, you know, like us making this stuff is one thing, but you guys actually watching this and playing it. And like I'm a fan of this stuff. I play video games all the time. I watch shows all the time, but like I don't feel like we move the needle. You know, you guys really are like I look at it as like you guys are my employer more than anything else, you know, because it's like I can work and get all these different jobs, but you guys caring makes all the difference in the world, because you could just as easily not give a crap about me. And the fact that you do means so much that I can't even really put it into words. So I hope you know how valued you are. Amazing. I'm honored to be a part of quite a legacy. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. You too. Be well. Thank you so much.